Hi everyone, my name is J.R. Smith. I'm a medical student at the Mayo Clinic and the creator of the Evolving Medic YouTube channel. And welcome to this installment of MEDizzy Inspire, where we speak with some of the most prominent healthcare providers across the world who share their story and what drove them into medicine with the hope to inspire the next generation of healthcare professionals. In this episode, we interviewed Mark Hannaford, the founder of World Extreme Medicine, a company that trains medics to survive in harsh conditions and deliver medicine in remote places. So without further ado, let's listen to his incredible story.
I guess I'm quite surprised to be where I am. So my background was, my passion was leading expeditions and going on expeditions. And I discovered when I was about 23, 24, I discovered I could earn a living leading expeditions. It was this massive revelation that I could do what I wanted to do for my pastime as my career. That's Anya, my husky. So I did quite a lot of dog sledding. So she came back with me at the end of after 10 years, and then that's her. So when I started leading my own expeditions, previously when I was working for other people, I was often given medics who were ill prepared to be in the environment that we were in. So, some of them had never been to altitude before. Some of them had never got really, really cold. But also some of them had never really got really hot and dehydrated and worked in the desert. So what I wanted when I set up my own expeditions is to bring medics with me who were used to working in those environments, or they'd been prepared so that they could work in those environments. So initially how I started was training my doctors to work in the environment that I was working in, so that they could be equal colleagues and allies. And I wanted them to be professionals. So for instance, in Kazakhstan, we were coming down the side of a steep pass into the camp. And as often the way, the accidents sometimes happen at the end of the day when people relax and they're tired. Anyway, somebody had a fall and had really quite a significant femur break. So previously when I was working for other companies, a doctor could have said to me, well, I'm on holiday. You're not paying me to be here. I'm not trained to do this, so I'm going to help you, but then the rest of it's up to you. I wanted to turn to my doctors and say, okay, this is the casualty, and I want you to take them back to England or back to, the next level of medical care that we were happy with. And in Kazakhstan's case, that happened to be back in the UK. So I wanted professionals who were well prepared to be in the environment that we were working in and were as comfortable as us to be in those environments, but also comfortable to be directed by an expedition leader who might have slightly wider experience than they might have. So we started to train our doctors who worked for us, and then we salaried them, so we paid them, and then we provided their standardized medical kit. And then we built up a community of really high performing, really good doctors who are just a pleasure to be and work alongside, and they can work in any environment. And then they requested that we make our training to them public. So it took us a couple of years because we were so busy with expeditions. We did our first public course, and 70 doctors turned up. And it was this big revelation that what we were training doctors to do was something that they wanted to learn. We really enjoyed working with the medical professionals that we were working with. It gave us a big thrill as well because we were learning from them, and it was also financially sustainable. We could we could keep on doing this. So, from our first course, it's clearly grown and just kept on growing really with the conference and the master's program. But so I said at the beginning, I have ended up here unexpectedly. And I think I have, I followed a passion and something I really, really enjoyed. Working with people that I got a lot working with as well as returning education to them. So it's followed a passion. And I think the underlying passion is doing expeditions, but keeping people safe in remote areas, whether that's expeditions or whether that's in humanitarian settings or a sort of military setting. So I guess that's my passion, and I've been following it. I don't know I don't know any other direction to go now, because I absolutely love what I do, and that's I feel quite privileged to be in the position I am. It's a really good question, and I think it's probably one that's particularly relevant to medicine, isn't it? Because you go into medicine with a passion for medicine, but it's quite easy to be diverted or to not be able to find the piece of medicine that really makes your heart beat faster. And I think I've been quite lucky in so much as I've never really listened to anybody else. So I guess I'm quite creative, which has allowed me to create opportunities and create a career path that's been quite sort of peripatetic and changed direction, but it's always gone in one general direction. And I still absolutely love what I do. And I think the big part of that is what we're doing in extreme medicine is really only limited by our own imagination, because there aren't any horizons that are bounding us in. We've got a massive horizon and we can go whichever direction we choose. And I think as long as we perceive that we're breaking down boundaries and joining good people together to make collaborations and make new ideas. I mean, what's really heartening for me is I can see all these expedition and extreme medicine groups popping up all over the world, kind of as a result, not entirely due to us, but we've certainly coalesced the subject matter. And now I see groups over there and companies that, and that's really, that's what we set out to do, because we didn't want to build a bastion, a castle around ourselves. What we wanted to do is build a community around ourselves, so actually everybody shares. And so if you're a humanitarian medic, you can go and do expedition medicine, or if you're an expedition medic, you can go and do humanitarian or tactical medicine, because there's a community of people with a shared passion. The shared passion is making medicine in remote places much better. That job never, I suspect, I know will never end. And that's it. I guess the legacy that we're leaving behind is there a community of people who not only share that passion, because people in the past have shared that passion, but have realized that you can actually make this part of your medical career. And for some people, it is their medical career. The possibilities are vast, and people just need to sometimes take, every journey starts with a really small step. They just got to take that small step and discover what it is that they like. I think there's a perception that expedition medicine or extreme medicine is climbing mountains, and that's kind of like the carrying going, but actually it's so much vaster than that. It can be working in a humanitarian setting, working in a refugee camp. It can be working anywhere where remote medicine is important. So one needs to find what piece of that is the bit that you really love and follow that pathway. But the community means that actually you can meander and follow your passion that way. I think I'm lucky because I get that in quite a lot of ways. I think one way in this is what I was saying, in so much as seeing other groups and companies spring up doing really good work in different areas and stuff, and I think as a result of the kind of the impetus or the energy that we've created behind this type of medicine, that gives me a great deal of satisfaction, because at the end of the day, if that results in only one person's life being improved or saved, then that's a worthwhile journey. But I suspect the ramifications and the ripple effect is much wider than that. And I guess on a personal note, I've always been a strong advocate of adventure and outdoors. It doesn't need to be far-flung countries, it can be on your own doorstep. And I think having the opportunity personally to engage my children in that and bring them up with a love of the outdoors and seeing them go off and do their own things is probably one of the things that's giving me the most satisfaction. And that we took, my son and my daughter were 5 months old when they first did their first expedition to Namibia. And our kind of rule of thumb was, once they, do you know what a platypus, one of the drinking straws that comes around from your rucksack? Once my they were babies, they could suck on the platypus, and so they could rehydrate themselves. Then we could go walking, and we could go trekking and hiking and stuff. And so my kids were 5 months, and I think for the first 2 months of their lives, they spent more time camping and sleeping on the ground than they did in the tent and stuff. And there was some resistance with our friends and stuff. You can't possibly take your children to Africa or to Namibia. That's too dangerous. But actually, when you start to realize, actually, when you're in the desert, there are very obvious dangers, aren't there? There's the sun, there's snakes, scorpions, all that type of stuff. Generally, those risks can be mitigated, and most snakes, except for occasional things like black mambas and stuff, they're moving away from you rather than coming towards you. Now, if you compare that to being in a house with knives and glasses and slips and falls and hot water, actually, I think it would be more dangerous to keep our kids inside a house than it was to be in the desert in Namibia. So, it's a balancing act. But society and people think, well, you can't possibly do that. But actually, God, the kids loved it. And it was just a really nice way to bring up kids as well. So anyway, that's kind of aside from the medical stuff, but it's about reimagining what's possible, or just not listening to everybody else and just doing your own risk assessments. Thinking to yourself, is this worth doing? Oh, do you know, that's a really interesting question, especially at the moment. First thing is sleeping properly. And I know sometimes that can be a challenge, and I've certainly gone through periods of my life when that has been a challenge for me too. Sleep, exercise. So trying to get at least an hour exercise, ideally outdoors, but it can be in a gym, and walking the dog or that type of stuff. And then when I've come against situations where I did a river crossing in Angola, where we were crossing, I think I might have told this story at the conference in Inframed. We were crossing a river. It was quite wide. We were going to swim. It's quite a strong current, but not too dangerous. We were going to swim, get the current to take us onto a rock, and we were going to rest on the rock and then do the easy bit of the river. Anyway, we got to this rock, and we got about must be 5 meters away from the rock, when the rock stood up and it jumped into the water. So the sleeping crocodile that was our big rock was now in the water, and now our rock was much smaller. So we landed on the rock, we went across to Angola because that was the easy part, but then we had to swim back across the river, and we knew there was I was using local guides who should have known better. And that was one of those things where you could, when I got towards the far bank, it was quite steep and quite slippery, and at that point, all I wanted to do was get out of the water because it was perfect croc hunting territory. And there was a point where I realized I was beginning to panic. Now, of course, the next thing that happens from that is you drown rather than any croc coming to get you. And it was a conscious thought that I had to, I'm going to drown if I don't get a hold of my panic. And I think sometimes it's just slowing everything down, taking a step back, saying, okay, what really is the big risk here? And trying to break it down into surmountable problems. So the first thing was to stop panicking. The next thing was to look where the bank was and get onto the bank. And then the third thing was to get up the bank and out of the river. So it's breaking it down into, bite-sized pieces. And I think with life, it can become extremely overwhelming. And sometimes it's not the big stuff that gets you, it's the small stuff. The fact that you've got to pay your tax or your rent, or your car has a puncture, it's all that small stuff that builds up. Sometimes it takes a degree, I think, of learning to appreciate that sometimes you just need to stop and go and exercise, go and talk to your friends and offload. And certainly talking to friends and offloading is really quite important. But reaching out, slowing down, and then breaking it down into bits that you can fix. And if you can, give some of those problems to somebody else to fix, like your best friend. Ask them to fix your tire because just ask for help. I think that's the big thing for help. I think it was my first. It came out of that story I told about training our own doctors, and then our doctors asking us to put the course on for the public. And I think what I wanted to do, I think it was opening a door for people to realize that actually they could combine their extremely worthy careers in medicine medicine doesn't attract people who don't care about people. So, people have chosen medicine because they care, and it's a very worthwhile and rewarding career, but it's also very tiring. It's stressful. There's, it's not the most straightforward of careers. And I wanted to show people that they could still be doctors, nurses, and paramedics, but they could also combine it with adventure, and actually, or with, if their passion is humanitarian medicine, they could combine it with that. And so they could achieve a balance with their medical careers that perhaps they weren't aware was a possible pathway. And I strongly believe that actually medics that go off and have these types of experience return to medicine better medics, because they've learned team building and they've learned problem solving. They probably have a better appreciation of the medical system in which they work normally, which they previously might have taken for granted. But going overseas, you realize actually medicine is unfortunately unequally spread across the globe. And so, it is a strong passion that not only do we provide or highlight these opportunities, but actually we return medics to medicine better medics, and certainly with some skills they wouldn't have had if they hadn't gone away. And now it's making, I guess the passion is making sure that what we do is of the best possible standard, so that we don't stop learning ourselves, so we constantly learn ourselves, so that gets reintegrated into what we're teaching. So I'm quite against fixed programs which give you that follow a Bible. We do have course books and what have you, but they're pretty fluid in so much as that new inputs can change that, and new advances, and we can change our course content in a space of a couple of weeks once we know that something coming in is verified and is of worth. And I think a lot of courses make the mistake of just repeating themselves all the time. So consequently, whilst they're up to date there, they no longer are as up to date as they could be there. So we've kept ourselves quite small. And with the conference, with the WEM conference, which is the world's largest gathering of these types of medics, there's constantly new input so that we're learning ourselves. Goes back to that word I mentioned before, passion. You can't be good at every element of medicine, so you need to find what really interests you, and what you're happy to stay up to midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning revising, because not only are you revising, you're also stimulated by the learning. And I think sometimes, and that's the tricky bit, because you might enter medicine thinking you're going to be one type of clinician, but actually what really interests you is a completely different type of medicine. And I think, by trying to experience as many different types as possible is going to give you the best chance of discovering what it is that you're really. I discovered actually I'm not so good at climbing. When I was younger, I thought I'm just going to climb mountains and do all the rest of it. I discovered that I'm just really good at logistics, and that's not what I expected. But it's just I am really good at just putting things together and making them happen. So you have to learn what you can only do that by experiencing as much as you can, and then talk to everybody. Just talk to everybody and be nice to everybody, because you never know when you're going to meet them again, and when you just be nice to everybody and talk to as many people as you possibly can and get as many inputs as you possibly can. COVID's kind of slightly mucked things up. So we were going to go sea kayaking in Greenland this summer, but that's not obviously going to happen now. So our next is a year in September where I'm actually going to Japan. So we're spending a month in Japan walking and climbing there. Because it's such a different culture, country, and I've been to Japan, but on a boat, so I've been up the coast a little bit. But I want to we'd like to kind of really immerse ourselves in Japanese culture, but also, go trekking and hiking for a couple of weeks and then do some climbing as well. So Japan. So it's not kind of the big expedition. It's more a preambulation and an enjoyment of Japanese culture, but doing, a mini adventure, mini expedition at the same time.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of MEDizzy Inspire. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for future videos where we'll continue to speak with some of the most inspirational people across the field of medicine. See you guys next time.